Welcome to my lectures in future studies. Today's presentation is slightly different than the other ones. It is a standalone excursion into some of the possible ideas that might help us to imagine digital reality in a more tangible way. And those well experienced in philosophy should be here. I'm going to talk a possible worldview, not the worldview, so it's just one of many. Right, it is about horizons and realities in architectural design, and I hope that some of these horizons and realities can be also used for other phenomena than design-related disciplines. This image I have borrowed from north of Sweden, where nature is rather untouched. Some of the stones there have stayed in their places for thousands of years, maybe even 10,000 years, from the moment the ice melted away. And on the photograph we can see several elements or substances. We can see water, we can see land, and we can see sky. And I've put it up here to focus on horizon, because horizon is both highly conceptual phenomena, but also a very tangible and everyday element of what we see around us. We can quite clearly see where the water is, and we can imagine where it ends. There is a shore there, quite similar probably like the one in the foreground. Where exactly the water stops and land starts, well, we almost know, but it's not very exact. There is a amphibian or liminal zone there where the water moves up and down and never is still, unless it's frozen, of course. But then where is the border between sky and land, earth and heaven? That is much more complicated issue. We clearly see that there is the skyline of the mountains, but behind it there seems to be that there are another mountain and another, but nevertheless we are quite clear that this is heaven and this is earth. That is why the concept of horizon is extremely powerful and at the same time quite understandable. Robert Grosseteste, the Bishop of Lincoln Cathedral, wrote approximately in 1225 an essay or a Tractatus de Luce on light. If we look at the horizon, it certainly has to do with light, because otherwise, in the darkness, we can't see the horizon, nor we can see the sky, nor the earth. So, in the previous times, light was the one that brought the horizon to us, made it visible, and helped us. Today we have lost the ability to see the horizon, because there are always lights somewhere. And even if they are not lights of the cities and villages, we always have the phone with us. So the absolute darkness is almost missing. Whereas at sunset and sunrise, we can clearly see that the light is there, opening for us heaven and earth. I recommend the Robert Grosseteste Tractatus. It has been translated into English already in 1942. The translation is old, but when one reads it, it really clearly shows how abstract and at the same time how clearly Robert Grosseteste was thinking, how modern it is if we look at it. The first corporal form, which some call corporeity, is, in my opinion, light. And out of the light, he describes how everything becomes. It's connected to theological understanding of the world, But at the same time, Robert Grosseteste is one of the first medieval opticians, clearly looking what is happening in geometry of optics. So that is the introduction to this presentation today. Another image to focus on horizon and human being and horizon is a graphic formulation of this light that starts by Cesare Cesarino in 1521. It's rather a complex drawing, actually, but nevertheless we see that the source of light then allows the light to distribute fairly evenly all over the sphere around the source of light. And then there is this rarefication. It becomes less and less the further it gets from its source. Quite similar to Plotinus' understanding of Hen, the invisible light, or further philosophers who used light and darkness as the sources of substances in the heavenly world. But we can see how the rays of light come to the surface, and then we can see that there is a man standing there, and out of the surface of the earth, the rays are mirrored back into the eye of the viewer. Organizing with these two implements that we can see the line of horizon. But the line of horizon is not just horizontal, as the name says. It also is vertical, because horizontal defines quite exactly the human standing on Earth. When I stand here, the horizontality of the surface or the imaginary horizon definitely describes several spatial elements that are important. It first says which is up and which is down, which is left and which is right, if I stand like that. It also describes what I see in front of me and what I imagine behind me. And when there is the sun on as eternal source of light, showing us the way in the world, then we are with these very small elements, or with these extremely simple concepts, we already have built a cosmology of its own right. Up and down, right and left, front and back, and then a human being standing in the middle of it. With the movement of the skies, a fully cosmological system suddenly starts to work. So these were the introductory remarks to the possible worldview. There have been many worldviews. Most often they are connected to philosophy, at least at the earlier stages of human culture, but later, of course, cosmology has a special brand of sciences in itself. On top of that, of course, astronomy and all the other sciences that want to tell us what the world around is about. The image is painted by Raphael in Papal Palace, and it's called the School of Athens. I'm sure you've seen it, and the central figures there are Plato and Aristotle. Both of them, and there are other contemporary images of important people, as well as reference to some of them as being part of similarities to the history of philosophy. But Plato and Aristotle both had their own worldview, or the system of philosophical ontology, how the world is built and what can we know about it. And it was Aristotle who was writing about the proteosiae, the primary or the first matters. In English language, there is the word substance. Substance, which describes something in common. It has a possibility to make a typology of its own kind. What is common in all the things? And of course, if we understand what is common in most of the things, we get one of the substances. Substantia and essentia in Latin. So substance and essence, as they are easily translated, but not entirely though. Heidegger criticizes the word substance. As usual, he pronounces it in its own way and says substance means standing, stasis, under. And of course there are these elements that are sub, so they belong into something else. And he says that substance is something that doesn't belong to anything. It stands alone, so it is not standing under. And therefore he says this is being, and builds his own worldview on the rather complex dynamic understanding of being. But there is another word that Greeks did use, and that is hypostasis. That is slightly different from substance. When substance is standing under, substance, stasis, then hypostasis is also standing under, but it is a foundation. So hypostasis is fundamental reality that supports everything else. So we are talking about the most common and universal substances in this presentation, which we believe, or which I try to believe, that they support everything else. So due to the course of philosophy, there have been myriad of different ideas. So there are many ontological systems where different substances are presented. Monistic, like the highly religious ontology of St. Augustine, where God is the primary substance and everything else is just the derivation of that. In Plato's case, we might say that he is pluralistic, but then there are, of course, dualistic systems where there are several substances. So substances, there can be several substances, and in our presentation for the understanding of matters of architectural design, I will come to at least 3 different substances or realities. Why is it important? It is important because of the mythological reasons, but of course from the pure point of theory, we need to name something, because when we name something, we understand it, and it becomes available to be discussed, and it becomes available to be investigated. So naming of things is important. How we name them, thus they will be, and how they are, we will call them, I would say. This very first hermeneutic circle that can be overcome if we are not rationalists, only by reciting the first primary religious or existential texts, and then establish this beginning of everything again and again. And here is probably one of the oldest for whole culture, Christian culture, and also the culture around the Christian culture, which comes to us, yes, something like 4,000 years before our time. Enuma Elish, the Babylonian Genesis epic. And it starts, when above the heaven was not named, and below the earth's name called. When no gods had made their coming, no names were called, no fates cast. So it goes on like that in Bible, of course. So it is the first grand forefather of biblical understanding of horizon or cosmos, where there is heaven and earth. In Estonian and in Finnish, the cosmos is very often called maailm or maailma in Finnish, which means, if we translate it and make it clear, it is earth and heaven put together in the same word. Can be used the other way around, ilma maa, meaning the heaven and earth. And ilm, in a way, can be both weather and heaven, and in a very short way, everything that is around us is concentrated in that one word. So even in these very early texts, the holistic understanding of the world, and then nevertheless the division between as horizon has made its coming. But in Enuma Elish, it is also nice that it goes beyond. It goes beyond the gods. It really constitutes just the space. When no gods had made their coming, no names were called. The names which were called were then written on the clay tablets, and even God could lose, as in one of the episodes of this Baal mythology. It happens. The name tablet of the god has been stolen, so he is in great danger, and the heroes have to find it and liberate the name from the enemies. No names were called, no fates cast, saying exactly that how we call the things really will be. But then back to ancient Greek philosophy, and just as a kind of very simplistic example, we can show that Plato had at least three substances. He was talking about the realm of being, where everything is fixed, perfect, in a way called also ideal. Ideal in both ways. It is not material, and it is the best possible form. And the idea or the mind of God being the most beautiful and the best is at the top of that hierarchy of being. There nothing changes, it's eternal, it is as it is. But then is the other world where we live, which he calls the world of becoming, where everything changes, even if we can't really see, it changes, and we can only remember some of the ideas that we were part of before we were born, and that's why Plato, as you probably might know, was quite hostile towards depictive, illustrative art, and also poetics, saying that these feelings really tie us to this world of becoming, like we hit nails through our body, so that our mind cannot come liberated from it. But then Plato also says that there is this third substance, or the third which he hasn't been talking at the beginning. Of course, I have made it extremely simple. It isn't that simple, and who doesn't believe me can take the Timaeus, where most of the ontology is described. It is pure mathematics in a concentrated and exposed way, where numbers are explained by text. So before the Hindu-Arabic numbers came, it was rather difficult to use complex algebra or algorithms because of the way the numbers were the numerical systems were built. And if someone then thinks from my text that Plato is that simple, it is perfect to read. It's in the old English translation. There are more modern ones which make it a little bit more clear, but nevertheless, this is how the world comes to be. He explains a long proportional system, then cuts the proportional system into two, glues the edges to it, makes the editor has added a drawing down there because no one otherwise would understand, and then he makes them move, rotate against each other, and that is the source of the world. Bernard Cash has made a lecture on, and he's using this as one example of the parametrical design in the very early times of European culture. But of course he can do it. I think he's a mathematical genius. So we can leave it there. Here is a little bit further text of Plato in a more modern language, and already here some words have made too simple. And there is a third nature, which is space. Of course, Plato never uses the word space, because in Greek there are two words for it, topos, meaning the place, a very exact location, and then this ephemeral thing, which has been translated here as space, which is chora. And then Plato goes on describing what this third nature is. And obviously, if the eternal world of ideas and the moving world of becoming is there, the third nature is much more difficult to grasp. And is apprehended without the help of sense by a kind of spurious reason, and is hardly real, which we, beholding as in a dream, say of all existence, that it must of necessity be in some place and occupy a space. But that what is neither in heaven nor in earth has no existence. And in a way, this chora type of third nature in the world does not have a very clear existence. And that existence can only be seen in the cases where something happens, where things are in motion. And there are two words for it, chora, chore, which is the feminine side of the stem word, and then choros, the masculine type. And most usually the analogical image for these are as dance and battle, or a battle dance. So both of these are temporary events, but nevertheless, within the dance, human body occupies a space and then leaves that particular space. So the space is in highly dynamic form, and only then we can recognize that this body has occupied that space, which then can be called chora. The same happening in the battle, where the result of the battle is unknown. It starts and then it ends, and within this struggle, then the human body that attacks or defends itself either moves forward or pulls back. And pulling back is one of these elements where this chora type of space really tries to show itself. It goes forward. It is in the Byzantine iconography, in icon building and icon painting. It goes further there in Greek Orthodox mysticism. But to our day, there are these words like geography, choreography, choir, chorale, chorus. All these really come from this very ancient, fully loaded word, chora. So I've marked it as not very clear or exact substance in the system, but it definitely is there. So Plato has a pluralistic system where there are at least three ingredients how the worldview can be described. In Aristotle, and he is holding the book Nicomachean Ethics in his hand, and Plato, as you probably have read already, is holding Timaeus. So Raphael was showing them with a philosophical regalia. In case of Aristotle, he denies, or he doesn't deny, but develops further Platonic systems, and in his understanding there is a potential and actuality. And in different objects, in different phenomena, in different ideas, these happen in different ratios. So the fully developed potential or dynamics is 100% potential, is God. And 100% actuality is the pure matter that has nothing more in it. But all the other phenomena in between, they have godly understanding in them as potential, and so they differ from each other according to proportions, which Greeks called analogos. The proportional system was analogy. It is then easy, of course, to simplify this understanding of substances or primary realities, and in case of Plato, we can easily go forward with mind and matter, and Cartesian understanding of the world just did that. Or then there are other possibilities. If we take the potential of Aristotle, we can go to mind and body dichotomy that cannot be explained so well by Descartes, but then comes into being in other philosophical systems, or Merleau-Ponty, for instance. And then, of course, we can simplify it even more and root ourselves in vulgar materialism, or then purely ideal subjectivism. And the vulgar materialism says that there is just only one primary matter, which is matter, the build of the world. Everything else is just a reflection of it, and our ideas are not really different from the matter around us. They are just different movement of nervous systems or electrons. Or the other extreme, of course, could be that there is no matter, everything is my imagination, and that is called solipsism.